Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Middle Ages channel. Today we're pulling back the velvet curtains and stepping into one of the most extravagant, boisterous, and frankly bizarre social events of the past, the medieval banquet. Forget what you think you know from movies. These weren't just big dinners, they were epic theatrical productions, political power plays, and a feast for all the senses. So grab a goblet of whatever you fancy and let's dive into the glorious chaos of a medieval feast. First, let's set the scene. Imagine walking into the great hall of a castle. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke from the massive fireplace, roasting meat, and hundreds of beeswax candles. The stone walls are covered with rich tapestries, not just for decoration, but to keep out the drafts. Down the center of the room are long trestle tables, covered in linen cloths. There's no fancy seating chart for most guests. You'd just squeeze in where you could on a hard wooden bench. But up on the dais, a raised platform at the head of the hall, that's where the real VIPs sat. The lord and lady, their family, and the most honored guests had the best seats in the house. They got chairs with backs and cushions, a canopy over their heads, and their very own, more elaborate tablecloth. This wasn't just about comfort, it was a visual reminder of the social hierarchy. Everyone in the room knew their place just by where they were sitting. The further you were from the high table, the less important you were considered. Now let's talk about the food, because that was the main event. And when I say food, I mean an almost unimaginable amount of it. A typical banquet wasn't served in courses like we have today. Instead, it was a series of removes. The servants, or servers, would bring out a huge variety of dishes all at once, place them on the table, and then after a while they would remove them and bring out the next wave. A grand feast could have 3 or more of these removes, each featuring dozens of different dishes. So what were they eating? Meat, meat, and more meat. Roasting on a spit was the preferred cooking method. You'd see whole roasted pigs, deer, peacocks, swans, and all sorts of game birds. Yes, you heard that right, peacocks and swans. They were often skinned carefully before roasting, and then the cooked meat was redressed in its own feathers to make it look alive. It was pure spectacle. It wasn't really about the taste. Peacock is apparently quite tough and gamey. It was about showing off the host's wealth and ability to procure such exotic creatures. Fish was also a huge part of the menu, especially on Fridays or during Lent, when meat was forbidden by the church. But we're not talking about a simple cod fillet. We're talking massive pike, salmon, sturgeon, and even eels, often cooked in elaborate sauces or baked into pies. They even made mock meat out of fish, molding it to look like a leg of ham to get around the religious rules. Vegetables? They were around, but not the star of the show. They were mostly cooked into pottages, which were thick stews of grains, vegetables, and whatever meat scraps were available. For the lower tables, this pottage might be the main part of their meal. Salads of fresh greens and herbs also appeared, but the main focus was always on the protein. One thing you wouldn't find much of was forks. Forks were seen as an Italian oddity and a bit, well, pretentious. Most people ate with their fingers, a personal knife, and a spoon for soups and stews. They would cut a piece of meat from the main platter and place it on their trencher. In early medieval times, a trencher was literally a thick slab of stale bread that would soak up all the juices. At the end of the meal, you could either eat your gravy-soaked trencher, or if you were feeling charitable, give it to the poor waiting at the castle gates. Later on, these were replaced by plates of wood or pewter. Now you might be thinking, what about table manners? They definitely had them. There were strict rules of etiquette. You were supposed to wash your hands before and after the meal in bowls of scented water brought around by servants. You weren't supposed to put your elbows on the table, talk with your mouth full, or double dip. You shared a drinking cup with your neighbor, so it was considered polite to wipe your mouth before you took a sip. And you certainly didn't throw bones on the floor like you see in the movies. You were expected to place them neatly on the side of your trencher. Let's move on to the drinks. Water was generally considered unsafe, so everyone, including children, drank small beer or ale, which had a very low alcohol content. The real stuff was wine and mead, Wine was imported from France and was a status symbol. The Lord's table would have the best quality, aged wine, while the further you went down the hall, the younger and rougher the vintage became. Mead, a fermented honey drink, was also incredibly popular. These drinks flowed freely. A banquet was a chance to let loose, and drunkenness was pretty common, though public brawling was definitely frowned upon. But a banquet wasn't just about eating and drinking. It was a full-on entertainment extravaganza. Between the removes of food, there would be performances. Minstrels and troubadours would play music on lutes, harps, and flutes, singing songs of epic battles and courtly love. Jesters would tell jokes and perform acrobatics. Jugglers, magicians, and even animal handlers with trained dogs or monkeys might make an appearance. The most spectacular form of entertainment, however, was the subtlety, or subtlety. These were incredible edible sculptures made from sugar paste, marzipan, or pastry. They were designed to be jaw-dropping. Imagine a miniature castle complete with knights and banners, or a scene from a famous legend, or even a political cartoon of the host's rivals, all made of sugar. These weren't really meant to be eaten. They were pure art, designed to elicit gasps of wonder from the guests and again show off the host's immense wealth and the skill of his cooks. These feasts could go on for hours, sometimes even days for a major event, like a wedding or a coronation. It was a marathon of consumption, socializing, and entertainment. It was also a critical part of the political and social fabric. For a lord, hosting a grand banquet was a way to display his power and generosity. He was literally feeding his followers, reinforcing their loyalty. It was a chance to negotiate treaties, arrange marriages, and cement alliances. A lot of business got done over a roasted swan and a goblet of wine. For the guests, attending a banquet was a chance to see and be seen. It was an opportunity to network, to curry favor with the powerful, and to enjoy a level of luxury they might not experience otherwise. Even for those at the lowest tables, it was a welcome break from the monotony of daily life and a chance for a full belly. As the evening wound down, the final course would be served. This often consisted of wafers, candied fruits, and spiced wine meant to aid digestion. After the final prayer of thanks was said, the high table would process out and the hall would slowly empty, leaving behind a scene of glorious disarray for the servants to clean up. So the next time you imagine a medieval banquet, don't just picture a stuffy dinner. Picture a vibrant, loud, and multi-sensory experience. It was a rock concert, a political summit, and an art gallery all rolled into one. It was a system of social control and a wild party, a reflection of the medieval world in all its complex, contradictory, and spectacular glory. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope you enjoyed this peek into the medieval Great Hall. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the Middle Ages channel for more deep dives into this fascinating era. Let me know in the comments what medieval topic you'd like to see next. Until then, stay curious.